I'm Janet Booth, a professional astrologer from West Hartford, Connecticut, and welcome to my program on astrology called Looking Up. This episode is entitled Autumn Outlook, and we are looking at 2019. And you might recall from earlier in the year, I think actually it was the December 2018 episode when we did the forecast for 2019, that there were some bumpy things going on in the year. It wasn't actually as bad as some of the prior years we had had. And I'm happy to tell you that the biggest bumps that we've had for 2019 are fading into the rear view mirror. And that's always happy news. So I will talk about some minor bumps today, but they are not as bad as what we have already had. You know, we've talked sometimes about the phenomenon called retrograde, which is when the planets will look like they're zigzagging through the sky. And this is an optical illusion that we experience as very real. But it's because Earth is in motion, other planets are in motion, and so there's this phenomenon where it looks like something's going backwards. And you may have experienced something like that if you were on a train next to another train and one's moving faster than the other. You get that feeling of going backwards. Or even two cars pulling away from a red light turned green. You can get that same phenomenon. So when we have a retrograde zigging and zagging, the hardest part of it is usually on the backwards part. So we get kind of like a preview of coming attractions the first pass. Then it comes through the backwards, which is the harder one. And it finales with a sort of almost a denouement on the third of those three hits. And when I'm talking about hits and passes, this would be when two planets are interacting with one another, or when a moving planet is connecting to your chart in some way. The third of the three is usually the kind of no big dealer. So that's what we have this fall, is some thirds. And usually when we start looking at a season, we start with a glance at the chart for the beginning moment of that season. In this case, it would be the autumn equinox. And this year, it's a little later than some years. It's been the 22nd, but this year's it's 23rd of September. The time on the East Coast is 3:51 a.m., and that would just be out in the Pacific, 12:51 a.m., just past midnight. So it's just barely making it onto the 23rd. And in that chart, the moon is in Cancer, which is the sign that the moon rules or has its strongest expression in. And that's very much a home, family, nation, tribe, caretaking, security and protection-oriented sign. And it's very close to what we call the north node of the moon, which is it's the intersection of the Earth-Sun orbit with the Moon-Earth orbit. And those intersections have a lot to do with how people bond and connect, also a little bit about karmic things that are going on. So it talks about our family bonds and our national bonds as being very strong at this time. And we've had Saturn hanging out in its sign that it rules, Capricorn, and it's been near the south node. That's been going on for months and months, and that's still in place, in fact, very strong and close to exact at the autumn equinox. And south node is about what to release, and Capricorn is about judgment. So time to kind of come more from the heart and less from a harsh judging perspective. And right in the middle of these two, making what we call the T-square, is Mercury, the planet of communication and thoughts. And it's in Libra, a sign of fairness and balance, equality, harmony, negotiation. And so it's a time for us to learn how to find that balance maybe between where our heart wants us to go, where our laws are restricting us from going, or finding a happy medium, maybe adjusting some laws to have more of a heart. Oh, don't we wish? Now, for a long time, Saturn has been getting closer to, well, actually not a long time. It's been already going on this year. Saturn's been in about a 2-degree called sextile, not 2 degree. Where's my mouth? 2 signs apart, 60-degree relationship, Saturn and Neptune. And Saturn gets softened by that connection with Neptune. Neptune is real kind of turn the other cheek and almost bleeding heart and very empathetic. And with this combination, it can be a time for us also to help put form, Saturn, or bring manifestation, Saturn, to our dreams and our visions. And that's one of the positives, best things that comes out of it. And that's one of the better aspects that we've had during the course of 2019. And we had it 3 times. January 31st, June 18th, final one, November 8th. Okay, so that's nice. And that's between the signs that each of them rules. Saturn's in Capricorn, which it rules. Neptune's in Pisces, which it rules. So they're both expressing very strongly. And this may also help bring rules and regulations into a more empathetic or sympathetic alignment, let us hope. Okay, so Venus also is in Libra, and Venus is the ruling planet of Libra, and Libra is that first sign of autumn where the sun enters on the equinox, and this adds to our desire for fairness and balance. It's very good for teamwork and for partnering, and we have some little bumpy part coming up I'll talk about in a little bit regarding marital partners, but maybe for business partners. It's still important to have the rules of the game well established in your partnership relationships. And this is because in that T-square I mentioned at the equinox, it's not just Mercury in the middle with Moon, Saturn on the nodes, but Venus is also close enough. It's within a few degrees of that. It's in the neighborhood. So it wants us to really work at negotiating better terms of fairness for everybody. Okay, so there's one of those that I very much like. I call them cuties, quintile triangles, planets that are 1/5 and 2/5 apart in the sky and that promote talent and luck. And at the equinox, the sun and moon are 1/5 of the sky apart. And then moon is 1/5 to Uranus. Sun is 1/5 to Ceres, and Ceres and Uranus are 2/5 apart. So there's like 4 points of what would be a 5-pointed star, which would be the luckiest thing. But when we talk about Uranus being related to the masses, and Ceres being about feeding and nurturing and supportiveness and kind of maternal energy, it's almost like great mother energy, and moon is very maternal energy, and sun is leadership. So we want to see, hopefully, more leadership in taking better care of the people as a whole. Now, with each new season, it's kind of like we get a new slate for the planets or the signs that are in that season. And the 3 signs of fall are Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. So they're kind of coming into their season. If that's your sun sign, you'll be having your birthday in the fall. But this is the time of year when you usually find your greatest power. Now that said, sometimes the toughest month is the one right before your birthday. So we kind of watch out for that. But if this is the opposite of your birthday season, if you're born in the spring and you're an Aries or a Taurus or a Gemini, you're kind of out of season right now. It feels like things aren't really easy for you to get what you're trying to do. And we're kind of leaving behind the summer season signs of Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. And we're getting ready to approach the winter signs of Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So it's nice to kind of look at what season are you in for your chart. And there's a very good book about this by an author named Christopher Renstrom, Renstrom. And he does a lot of astrology columns, but he lectures to astrologers, and good person to check out. Now, we had a big eclipse 2 summers ago. Remember? We all went out with our eclipse glasses on or our boxes with a pinhole in it to watch the moon moved between the Earth and the Sun, August 21, 2017. And it was visible all across America. When the ancients looked at how long does an eclipse have an effect for, they had kind of a rule of thumb as to how many minutes or hours of totality, and they stretched that out into years and months and days for the effective period of an eclipse. And that eclipse's effective period lasts until the first week of October this year. I worked it out one time. I think it was the 3rd, but it might have been the 7th, so don't quote me, but it's that first week. And you may or may not recall, or maybe we didn't talk about this, but I think we did, that eclipse took place at, let's say, 29 or 28, I think it was 28 degrees of Leo. And President Trump's rising degree is 29 of Leo, and his Mars, his combative Mars, is 26. So that eclipse was hitting him very strongly. And if it's going to have any more kind of important, difficult, I was going to say kind of punching effects, they have till about October 1st to work themselves out. So we'll see how that goes. Now, right before the autumn equinox, and I think we talked about this in our July program, which was a look at July and August in depth, the final time for Jupiter coming into a 90-degree called square with Neptune was on the 21st of September, just before the equinox. So that still kind of has a hangover effect. It's still sort of strongly in effect at the equinox, and anything in place at the equinox will kind of linger through the season. But as I look at my notes, it's not in any big nasty pattern, like they're not making a T-square with something, so I'm not tremendously worried about that. But I'll mention it for this reason. Neptune has sort of, as do all the planets, multiple expressions, but I always say it has kind of like a two-sided coin. And on one side of the coin is fear, and on the other side is faith. And so when people have expanded by Jupiter, oversized fears and paranoias, they can act in strange ways. And that's one of the things we need to watch out for still in the autumn. And need to find what it is you need to believe in or have more faith in to quell those fears. So let's see. We have a long-term, many, many, many years of Chiron just one sign away from Uranus. And together that's very good for sort of inventive solutions to problems. And this is activated in that same first week of October. So we'll see if that brings anything interesting. And let's see what else. Okay. Ooh, I see that there's another one of those cute quintile triangles. Latter part of November, early December, and that involves Pluto and Chiron, which have been traveling 1/5 of the zodiac apart. And they have one of those many connections occurs the 18th of October, but we're going to see it pumped up, kicked up a notch by Saturn connecting to both of those planets November 27th, December 3rd. Now, Jupiter is quick enough that it makes a lot of connections as it's moving through its one sign per year, and it's going to also be activating that Chiron Uranus December 8th, 15th. Okay, so when two planets are a sign apart, they can receive a positive connection from a moving planet. One of them gets a positive and the other one gets a challenging one. So it usually means things are a little bit mixed. And we might see this expressing as some kind of faulty attempts or missteps in trying to make some of those improvements. Okay. Now we always like to look at what's happening with the full moons and the new moons during the course of a season. And we have, as soon as the season gets going, a new moon 28th of September, and that one is in Libra. And that one didn't pop up on my list as being problematic. However, the full moon of that cycle, which comes on the 13th of October, does have some difficult combinations coinciding with it. And perhaps I'm going to see those somewhere here. Oh, yes, here it is. So remember I said Jupiter, it's doing some scratchy things, and one of them is square and a half. The fancy big word is sesquiquadrate, but who wants to say that? Square and a half, 135 degrees with Uranus. And that would be interpreted as big weird, or big surprises coming out of the blue that aren't necessarily happy ones. Okay, so we had it twice already. We had it January 9th, June 6th, and it's back on the 14th of October, which is right close to that full moon on the 13th. And there's something else I'm going to find here in a minute that's also right around that same time. Well, here's a good thing that's happening then. All right, at that time, remember I said Saturn and Neptune, 2 signs apart. So Mercury comes in, 2 signs from Saturn, 4 from Neptune. Those are all considered favorable connections. And oh no, yes, that's happening twice. Happens, well, maybe 3 times, at least twice. October 14, 15. And then it recurs in November, because in November we have Mercury going backwards on its zigzag, and it recurs on the 13th of November. So what I would say about that October 13th full moon, although some kind of big weird surprise might happen, it's going to help us put things in perspective and understand better, maybe even things about how karma manifests, because Saturn is a planet of karma, and so is Neptune. So when we see the two of those working in concert, then Mercury comes in, planet of awareness, and that's going to show us a good lesson that we need to learn. Okay. So Jupiter then moves fairly quickly once it gets going. You know, it's been retrograde in the spring to summer. August 11th, it turned direct. Then it kind of starts to pick up steam. And there's only a 15-degree difference between the square and a half, that's 135 degrees, and a third of the sky, which is 120 degrees, called trine, which is good. So that by the time we get to December 15th, Jupiter is in a good connection with Uranus instead of a harsh one. So it will give us this idea that maybe there's things seem kind of bumpy in October, and they get ironed out or smoothed out by mid-December and before the end of the year. And you know, Jupiter is also going to change its sign. So since November of 2018, it has been in Sagittarius, the sign that it rules. And Sagittarius and Jupiter together both are very much related to international situations and global things. So what we're going to see is when Jupiter leaves Sagittarius, and that's December 2nd, I believe, yes, and it goes into Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign about laws and governments and doing things more by the book. You know, Sag is kind of loosey-goosey, everything goes, it'll all turn out all right, optimism's riding high. And Capricorn's kind of more like, you know, you better take a good look at what reality is over here. So I think some of our optimism is going to subside for 2020 particularly, and we'll talk more about that before we get there. But as Jupiter comes into Capricorn, but the first thing it does, major thing it does there, is it makes that nice connection with Uranus. And Uranus is moving through Taurus. We talked about this earlier in 2019, maybe the May program, I'm not sure. Maybe earlier. Taurus is a money sign, and Uranus is a roller coaster planet. So we're probably going to see, we've already started to see, volatility in the markets. And Jupiter could just amplify that rather than say, oh, it makes it a nice outcome. Because sometimes we look for a nice outcome with Jupiter. Sometimes it's giving us more hope than we're entitled to have. Now, I'm mentioning about Jupiter going into Capricorn. Capricorn is the first sign of winter. And whenever we have planets at the 0 degree of one of the season-changing signs, whether it's Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, those are the 4 PowerPoint degrees of the zodiac where it kind of has things that connect people far and wide, which the equinoxes and solstices do. And they're the degrees I call movers and shakers and newsmakers and the people who rub elbows with them. So these are times when we have maybe more important news events which correlate with the cardinal, that's the type of sign, it's called the cardinal degrees. Or if you're looking to form a business and you want to have it be popular, or you're launching a internet website, or you're launching some kind of program, you'd like to have something at a 0 degree of a cardinal sign. And I do believe that one of our better days of the year is, yes, the 3rd of December, the very next day. So while Jupiter is in this 0 Capricorn, giving us some popularity potential, Tuesday, the 3rd of December, is a great day. We've got Venus and Mars aligning nicely with those nodes, which says it kind of connects people in ways that are very social and very active. It's during the waning portion of the moon. Yes, it is. No, not waning, waxing. The growing of the light. And that's what you also want to have when you are starting something important. So if you still have something on your to-do list in a big way for 2019, that might be a good option for you. Now we talk about how strong a planet is when it's in the sign that it rules. And the reverse is also true, that a planet can't express its usual traits well when it's opposite the sign that it rules. So when we talk about Mars is associated with Aries, and that's all about strength and competition and almost steamrolling over other people, and it can be very selfish. Well, we're going to have the opposite with Mars going through Libra for a good chunk of the fall, almost half of it. It comes in on October 4th, and it's there until November 18th, and that's about 6 weeks, and each season is 13, so half a season is 6.5, very close to half the year. And in this case, Mars is still proactive, but instead of being abrasive and so self-concerned, it's more proactive about connecting people, about having partnership, about finding middle ground, compromises. And this, if it's a fight for fairness and justice. Think of the scales of Libra. So we may see, if there's a real need for a big fight for fairness this fall, that there'll be plenty of action in that regard. And then Mars will go in for the rest of the fall and into the winter into Scorpio from the 18th of November to the 3rd of January. Now, before we discovered Pluto, Mars was the ruling planet of Scorpio, so it's happy to be there. And it's a sign of transformation, kind of turning over a new leaf. And Mars is also a planet about getting things going. Pluto's a great sign for, I'm not Pluto, Pluto's the new ruler of Scorpio. Scorpio is a great sign for getting rid of stuff. So if you have a lot of things you need to clear out, after the 18th of November, you're probably going to feel very gung-ho about doing that. Oh yes, and I should backtrack 1 second. When Mars goes into Libra on that 4th of October. For 2 or 3 days, it'll be at the 0 degree of Libra and also have that sort of potential for popularity. We're going to have Venus return as the evening star by at least before the end of September. You'll probably be able to see it starting around the 24th. And as we see the new moon around the 29th of September, you should be able to see Venus and Mercury, maybe Mercury, very close to that new moon. Now, other full moons that might be interesting. Oh, the November full moon on the 12th, I wrote this was tame. Oh, that's good. And the moon and sun are making nice connections with Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. So that's kind of like get your act together time. Let's see what else. Okay. So I mentioned Jupiter trine Uranus on the 15th of December, and it gets a boost. It's very accentuated in the next new moon after that, which is technically in winter on the 4 degrees of Capricorn on the 26th, Boxing Day, 26th of December. You know, we talk about how eclipses are some of the most intense energies, and they come in clusters, 2 or 3, and then about 6 months and 2 or 3. And so we've had our eclipses, or still having them, in summer and in winter. So fall, no eclipses to worry about with there. Okay. What else do I want to say? We're coming down near the end here. Oh, I have a nice page about good times. Yay! First thing on my page says, no government shutdown. They've already figured that out and upped our debt ceiling and avoided that mess. Thank you very much. We have a lovely day coming up on October 20th. That is not during the waxing moon, though, so this is not a start a new venture time, but it's add to something that's already ongoing, and you'll have very good results with that. And it's a number 4 day. You know, I rate the days 1 through 5, 5 being best. There's only one of them all year, September 3rd. And a 4, therefore, is very good. 1s are the worst. And on this day, we have the pattern called a kite, which is very nice interaction between things. And it involves that Saturn sextile, 2 signs with Neptune. Pluto's close enough to Saturn to play with it. The nodes come into play, and Venus interacts with them. So this is a very good time for relationships. A tougher time for relationships. The asteroid Juno is the marriage asteroid, and it's getting slammed around a little bit. October 5, 6, 7, 10, and 14 at the new moon. So be nice to your marital partner and see if you can't find something very exciting to do on the 20th of October or the 3rd of December. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some more of this stuff as time goes by on Looking Up.